Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, chat. You lovely people. It's nice to see you today, Joe. How you doing today, brother?
Man, I am well and good all at the same time. We're trying out a new sample color of the shirt, the sand color, and hopefully we'll get those available. But we have to test them out, make sure that they're going to wash up nice and still work. So we will see.
Right on.
But I will say this: if you want to order T-shirts or books or patches, you are running out of time. If you want to
Yeah,
order them from me, you got to get them by Friday,
the 15th,
so we
right?
can guarantee delivery. So.
Yeah. Um, it's just the two of us today, but we will do the Council on Future Conflicts. Just the two of us. Episode 454. We're talking. Let's be honest. We're talking Syria today. Why are we talking Syria? Well, kind of two reasons. We've got two kind of segments. Both of them are Syria focused. One is focusing on Syria, the internal problems, and the other is the kind of the shockwaves into the international community and how other countries are interacting with this. So one of the reasons why that we are being so focused on this is that Joe, this is one of those kind of things that 20 years from now we're still going to be dealing with this the knock-on effects. It's kind of like just the same way we were dealing with the Mujahideen fights with the Russians 20 years later in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean that all assumes that we'll all still be here 20 years from now as a nation. But yes, this is one of those things. The world changed, and it might have felt like a little thing, but it's sending ripples throughout history. Absolutely.
Now, the only thing that might make us not be having to deal with Syria is if the world absolutely bursts into flames of just just utter warfare. Um, Now that may cause it, but we should we have a lot of time between now and 20 years from now.
Well, I don't know. Mongol Moon Day is coming right up,
That's
which
right.
is
That's right.
Christmas Eve. Yeah.
Like Die Hard, Mongol Moon is a Christmas story, so make sure you get your copy. Yeah. I'm going to do my. I probably for my Ruck March this coming weekend, I'll do my Mongol Moon audiobook. Just to kind of get it done.
There you go.
Um,
I understand though that much like the Bible, volume 3, in the third volume, he shall rise again. There's going to be a glorious resurrection. I have it on pretty good authority in Mongol Moon 3. So
well,
we shall
it's
see.
like in comics, Joe. If there's no body, then was there ever a death?
Exactly. I think that through a coordinated campaign by you good people in the chat, I think that we have convinced him that I need to not be dead. So
Well,
we shall see.
I would just settle for being in the third book. So
Right, right. I'm pretty sure that he only killed me off in the second book because I wish the sequel campaign. So
right.
we'll see. And for the record,
I,
Demp claims that he wrote a short story for Volume 2, but I told him that that is obviously false because he cannot read. So we will see.
Um, I Joe, one of the things we're going to talk about today is you know what? I think I might just go do this one first. Well, no, I don't have it. I don't have it in here, but since I this kind of came up, I thought I would add it in, and this is a kind of a little teaser to get the show started. Um, because I want to talk. We're not talking about the January 6th stuff, but it's coming up, right? You know, it's it's a thing that we will be dealing with here in the near future, whether it's the pardonings or the anniversary. So we're going to be talking about that a lot in the coming weeks. But this kind of came across my timeline today, and it was not something I was expecting because um, Joe Rogan had Quentin Tarantino on his show. I don't know if you saw any of any of the clips from that or anything like that. And I thought this was interesting. So I want to play this real quick here. Let me stop sharing that and present over here. All right, let me. All right. Let me present this here. All right. So check this out, Joe, and just tell me to pause it if when you want to comment.
I've got a friend who's one of those January 6th guys, and he's sends me like tweets all the time. Like
you got a friend who was a January 6th guy?
Though. Yeah.
You got a friend who was a January 6th guy?
Well, he's still there. He's like hundreds of days in jail without any kind of without trial. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but like that's not how it's supposed to be, is it?
It's not how it's supposed to be.
You're supposed to have a due process of some kind.
Well, especially when you watch the actual footage of how it went down.
Oh, I watched it live, and there was that guy, that Antifa guy, waving people in, like moving them in.
Yeah.
They were moving the blockade things. They were moving them out, and cops were waving people in. They were opening the doors for people.
I want you to think about it this way: in the most heavily armed nation the world has ever known, why would you have an insurrection with no guns?
You got to have guns, machine guns.
Those guys weren't planning on an insurrection.
No.
And then you have the factor that there was agents in the crowd, and we don't know how many.
So, Joe is clearly not a big conservative. I mean, you could call him a patriot, but I wouldn't say patriot with a capital P, like the kind of people who were there in January 6th. But these people are just rationally talking through the problem set and coming up with the correct answer, right? They just used their eyes. They looked at the video and they're coming to the correct answer. How hard is it for these absolute knuckleheads on the left to just kind of work through the problem and realize, you know what, maybe we're the baddies in this.
Yeah, maybe we're the bad guys. I don't know. But it's good to hear people talking like that. First of all, as I've been beating the drum on forever, due process is a thing, and we've denied it to these people. I want to ask a question. Do we know if Nancy Mace's attacker from yesterday is still in custody? And if not, why not? So,
yeah. For those of you who are worried if I may get a copyright claim, I don't care. Anyway, I'm pausing and commenting, and that will be the justification. Let's continue.
There's government agents in the crowd that were inciting people to go in.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And I want to know who that cop was who shot that woman.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah, the whole thing's crazy.
Yeah,
the whole thing's crazy. And then there's this thing that cops died. That no cops died that day. That's
Joe. What do you think the chances are we'll see a federal murder charge against? It have to be a federal charge, right? Because it happened.
Well, murder happened on federal property, so yeah.
Yeah.
So 18 U.S. Code 111 would apply. But here's the thing: that's never going to happen. And in fact, that lieutenant has already asked for a pardon. I asked yourself, why does he need one?
Yeah.
If he didn't do anything wrong. So.
Well, speaking of pardons, have you heard about these blanket pardons that the White House staff they're thinking about blanket pardoning all illegal immigrants for against the federal crime of entering the country illegally? They're still illegals and would be able to be.
I don't think you can do, just as you can't pass a bill of attainder. You can't. This would be a bill of attainder in reverse, and you can't do that.
Yeah, well, so there was some interesting some people who have a lot more legal brains in their heads than I do. Were saying that the pardon power given that the Constitution gave to the president was essentially taking the king's pardon power from England and duplicating that same power for the president. And in the British understanding of the pardon, you can't pardon somebody for a crime that you don't know about.
Well, you also can't pardon somebody you cannot name.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a sticking point there, right?
Right.
So,
all right, I'm gonna play a little more of this, and then we'll get on with the show.
It's not true.
No.
The cop who died, he died of a stroke. And I believe it was a stroke or a heart attack. But
like everything, there's a lot of misinformation being given to us by the mainstream media.
But it gets attributed to it, sort of like when, anything happens to anyone 4 years after the vaccine, they attribute it to the vaccine. Oh, it was probably the vaccine.
Yeah.
Could have been the guy just had a fucking heart attack. But this guy who was a cop, he did not die there. He was not killed by the protesters. And you watch the video of the shaman dude with the fucking buffalo hat. They're walking him around. The cops are guiding
they're showing him around. No,
they're guiding him. How would you ever think that is going to let you wind up in jail? How would you ever think that if you're an unsophisticated guy who was wearing fucking face paint and you're kind of a kook, and you think you're part of a movement, which is really scary. You know, people get a part of a movement and we're all doing it. And then you've got literal government agents encouraging you to do it, moving barriers, letting you in. They were playing chess and these idiots were playing checkers.
Yeah,
and they all got locked up.
Sense. Yeah,
because nobody was doing an insurrection.
It wasn't an insurrection.
It wasn't an insurrection.
Yeah, you don't do an insurrection without weapons. The whole idea is crazy.
So there was no presumption that there was going to be any kind of that you were going to get thrown in jail for 1,000 days. And so my pal Jake Lang is he's been there forever, and every now and then I get a picture of him. Like he's been in look, I deserve to go to jail. That guy doesn't, right? And most of those guys don't.
Yeah, I think it was a bad decision, certainly, to go into the Capitol. It was a bad decision to smash windows, but I want to know who was
people
doing
had been smashing things for a whole year before that.
Right. That's a very good point.
It's like we were a culture of smashing things at that point.
It's also as soon as you find out that there were government.
So anyway, I thought this was interesting. This is, by the way, this is Roger Avery. He's one of I think the producing partner for Quentin Tarantino for his films and things like that. They've been together for a long time. So, let's be honest. I mean, more truth comes from Joe Rogan nowadays than it does from the mainstream media. Sad but true, right? But that's just the way it is. Any other thoughts on that before we go on?
No, it's just Rogan came through in true fashion when he called everyone involved idiots. So,
are you talking about with the?
No, just there. He said those idiots all went in there and got arrested.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't disagree.
I don't know how smart it is to go into a federal building that is closed off, even if the feds are waving you in. Talk about being, glowy. Well, come on in.
As an absolute constitutional purist, I would say that the government never had the authority to close the people's house. But what do I know?
Yeah, no, I there's something to that, right? All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on, shall we? The first thing here in our odds and ends, we got a little bit of mileage out of that. So it's not quite the first odds and ends here, though. This is an interesting one. House to vote on $3 billion in funding to remove Chinese telecom equipment from U.S. networks. Joe, you think that might be a good idea?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been working out so well.
I know. And the Chinese are our friends, right? Taiwan, they're Chinese, right?
I heard from this one guy who suggested we should let him on our show that the Chinese aren't aggressive and they're our friends. But we'll see.
Yeah, clearly he never made it on the show.
This is the funniest thing ever. You turned to me moments afterward and said, "That's never going to happen."
Let's see. So here, let me just tell you a little bit about this article. The House of Representatives is preparing a vote on an annual defense bill. Yeah, the NDAA. By the way, that's another. I don't want to get too bogged down in politics, but the NDAA is basically trying to shackle, the first year of Trump's time to the current administration's plan for the Pentagon. Yeah. Anyway, for the NDAA, updated on December 7th, increases funding for the Secure and Trusted Communications Network Act to nearly $5 billion, addressing a funding shortfall noted by the FCC. Originally passed in 2019, the act targets Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE. FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel highlighted the need for additional funds, noting that many U.S. carriers face financial shortfalls in replacing insecure technology, with rural communities being significantly impacted. Competitive Carriers Association CEO Tim Donovan emphasized a critical need for funding to maintain connectivity. Recently, the intelligence agencies confirmed that Chinese state-sponsored hackers have compromised several American telecom companies. You don't say, Joe. Wasn't it like literally all the big telecoms got hacked last week? And like the federal government was telling people use WhatsApp and Signal.
After decades of telling people never use WhatsApp.
Don't use it, right? The group Salt Typhoon is under investigation for cyber espionage activities aimed at senior political. So, I mean, let's be honest, Joe. This is long time. This should have happened a long time. They should have, got rid of this shit a long time ago. But they never should have let the Chinese and the hardware in the country in the first place. But anyway, what do I know?
Well, what do we know?
Any more thoughts on this, Joe?
No, just it's China bad. If I have to tell you that, man, we got problems.
Well, but here's the thing, right? Is we always think of, when we think about infrastructure, we think about our roads and our bridges and things like that. One of the things that we have just completely neglected is the whole idea of our kind of digital infrastructure. I mean, whether it's the cybersecurity piece, and we've talked about that recently, or whether it's the Chinese, hardware that we've allowed in to be part of this. I mean, ultimately, if something is a vector for like a cyber attack, we shouldn't let it into the country. I mean, we should literally have a nationwide ban on that equipment. Specifically, this would be sold at the for the data centers and the backbone of the internet.
Yes, it just reminded me of something about that same individual from yesterday. But anyway, yes, there's no way that China should be involved in any of that, and it's our own fault for letting them. But it is something we can fix. But I don't think we'll ever get to that funding level to fix it, because it's going to cost a lot of money.
Steve says America hardly makes telecom equipment these days. Vast majority was outsourced to other countries. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? If you ban the Chinese stuff, right, that gives other competitors a window to be able to come in, whether it's American or other countries, right? Because not only is China bad, but China also undercuts in the markets, so like they will sell things for less, it's called dumping. They will dump items in the U.S. market that no U.S. maker could ever compete against. So, what's that? Joe, look at this. Peter says helicopter says Scott isn't even in the U.S. What is this we talk? Hey, brother, guess what's on the front cover of my passport? It ain't South Korea,
right?
That's the we I'm talking about. All right. Yeah, so evidently Rick says, I thought Trump put the kibosh on Huawei in his first term. He did, but from what I understand, there was funding shortfalls to replace some of this gear. And on top of that, after Trump left, a lot of his restrictions fell away. So.
Well, and also a lot of the restrictions that the president can actually put on stuff only apply to the federal government. It doesn't apply to literally anyone else. So it was still in the other networks that were not necessarily federal government ran.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole kind of China's going to eat our lunch thing is, I mean, if they beat us in any way, in any kind of competition, Joe, it's because we let them beat us.
Yep.
I mean, literally the only thing they have on us are more people. That's it. and I don't count their people as high quality. Having been reared within the communist hellhole that they live in, fascist hellhole, authoritarian, whatever you want to call it. And Chinese people deserve freedom just like anybody else. But that being said, when you grow up in that kind of an environment, it definitely does something to your brain. All right, let's move on, shall we? Joe, we're going to talk about what are your favorite topics of late. The parasites had it coming. Luigi Mangione's manifesto published online by journalists.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
Well, it's definitely been a topic du jour, What's your kind of, based on what we know at this point, Joe, what's your take on this guy?
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said based on what we know up to this point, what's your take on this guy?
My take on this guy is, despite everyone who wants to argue with me about it, he is a leftist. He might have some right side leanings, but he himself is an avowed anti-capitalist, and he wrote a thesis on his experience with anti-fascist violence. So that tells you something about him. But the biggest problem in all of this is that these guys on both sides are cheering him on and appear to be justifying political violence. That tells you that as a nation, we're in an incredibly dangerous moment when both sides think that assassinations are okay. And there's a lot of interesting issues out there. So that's the biggest thing. The guy is absolutely a whack job, and he's out there. There's a lot of things that don't add up, though. One, the fact that it was a 3D printed gun. I don't think it's a coincidence that we're having a discussion about 3D printed guns and one suddenly gets used in an assassination that was very public and done right in front of a camera. And I find it very odd escape and evasion behavior to be hanging out at a McDonald's with everything needed to prove your guilt still in your possession 7 days later. So,
he still had the gun on him, didn't he?
Yeah. Along with the rounds that have the writing on them. So, I mean, come on.
They found his jacket in Central Park, but caught him wearing the same outfit 5 days later.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Joe, this is...
You know what? Pyrometer nails it. Yep.
I mean, when a man needs a McRib, the man needs a McRib.
If you guys have never done it, everyone in the chat, I dare you, I challenge you to go to YouTube and put in the search bar McRib Thanksgiving and watch the girl who goes before her city council in California to complain about the lack of the McRib sandwich one Thanksgiving. It's amazing, Joe, and it's real.
Can I just say that I haven't heard one peep out of the left saying, this guy used a silencer. We should ban silencers. People shouldn't be able to. It's kind of funny, right?
Right. But the Giffords organization did come out last night against ghost guns because of the assassination. But that's it.
Yeah, I haven't. Let's be honest. I haven't heard a lot of people speaking out about ghost guns. But yeah, I think I've seen maybe 3 or 5 left-wing tweets or whatever about the ghost guns, but nothing about cans. So it's just that I thought that was interesting. Let's see, somebody in the chat brought it up. That it's 3D printed can, and now there's been more talk about the Hearing Protection Act. Yeah, I've seen more tweets about the Hearing Protection Act recently than that. And speaking of which, we were talking right before the show started about potential picks for the ATF. Evidently, there's a guy from Arizona who ran for, I think, Senate in Arizona, but didn't get it. And he is one of the names being talked about, and I guess Brandon Herrera's name is still being kicked around as well. So, I mean, we all agree the ATF is an organization that needs to be shuttered forthwith, but until it does get shuttered, I would rather we have a patriot sitting at that desk.
Be careful with the term patriot, because the people on the left, some of them consider themselves to be patriots as well.
That's true. But that doesn't mean they are. They can consider themselves whatever they want. They could consider themselves smart, but if they're a communist, then that means the opposite of smart.
Obviously not.
All right. So let's dive into this and see what he says. Basically, the journalist wrote, "I've obtained a copy of the suspected killer Luigi Mangione's manifesto, the real one, not the forgery circulating online." Okay, well, I guess, because you say so, it's real. Major media outlets are also in possession of the document, but have refused to publish it and are not articulated a reason why. My queries to the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, NBC to explain their rationale for withholding it, while gladly quoting from it selectively, have not been answered. So here's the full manifesto. Do I want to read this whole thing? It's not too long. I'll read it. It says, to the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. Well, they're clearly not one of us, Joe. Right. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anybody. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife or of traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. That kind of definitely leans into the anti-capitalist ideas that he has. Mm-hmm. A reminder, the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. The United States is indecipherable largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only, I would say that's probably a healthcare company, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but our life expectancy, ? No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal more decades ago. The problem simply remained. It's not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Well, yeah, you're the first, buddy. What's your take on that, Joe? What do you read into there?
I'm not going to read anything into it because I don't know the true source document, right? Both sides are claiming there's two different ones and all of that. At this point, I don't trust anyone who releases anything, because how do we know what the real source is? What was the real document? If this was 20 years ago, I would trust a reporter putting this out. This guy could have typed this up on his own computer, for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Let's see. So NBC News' Ben Goggin commented on the manifesto published by Clip Inside. Seeing many fake manifestos being published, the one published by Ken matches what NBC has reported here as real. All right, so this is at least one person saying that this seems to be the same one that they have and have verified it. I don't know. I guess the NBC must have verified it with either the FBI or some other law enforcement. Media independently confirms the authenticity of my article. This is from the person who released it. So Frank Figliuzzi, former assistant director of counterintelligence at the FBI, told today the Today Show that the murder suspect fits the profile of an activist killer. Now, Joe, do you think there's any likelihood that he did this completely on his own?
No, there's zero chance.
And just kind of speak what you think the likely backstop for him is, as far as
he has likely been staying with a safe house network at the very least, right? We have no records. He had the same fake ID on him that he used to check into the hostel. They know that because your hotel reservations nationwide are actually not private. You don't have a right to privacy in them because they belong to the hotel, not you. And if he had actually used that ID to check into a hotel or hostel or anything, campground along the way, it would have been flagged and they would have had him already. The fact that he hasn't tells you he's been staying with other people. So he at least has a network that he was moving through. The fact that he was on his computer when they stopped him, if they had a fairly decent idea who he was, they would have been all over that. They'd have been able to track that right away. And one of the interesting things, Hunch actually texted me last night, is about the possibility of a geofence warrant. That's entirely possible. I guarantee you the first step they did when this assassination happened was a geofence warrant, which basically says we want information from the cell phone companies of every cell phone that was within a 6-block radius of this killing at the time of the killing. And I guarantee you that pointed them in a direction. So there is a lot there. And like I said, when everyone wanted to argue with me about, well, he's from a rich family, I don't care how rich your family is. No one carries $8,000 in United States currency on them because, one, the police will take it. And two, it's highly suspicious to have that much cash on you. And what's with the $2,000 in foreign currency? What foreign currency was it?
Yeah.
Was it Canadian dollars? Was it rubles? Don't know.
Euros. Yeah.
Euros.
But, the other thing that might be interesting is that it seems like after the fact, though, he probably was not welcome in that safe house network that he might have been staying in beforehand.
I would think he was even more welcome when you look at the public opinion around this killing.
I see. The only reason why I don't think they would have let him out. And
Dude,
also,
can you guys not turn off the Dem Juice thing for like 30 seconds? Is that not possible? Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, it was the Jews. This seems like something the Jews would do. I'm glad you find it funny. Anyway, it sickens me. Carry on.
Anyway, so what I was going to say is that it seems to me that if he was kind of brought back into the network, then his allies would have dressed him up in something different, and because the whole point of the safe house is to avoid capture, and would have probably sanitized his gear is what I was thinking. That's why I'm thinking that he probably was, either A, he was going to a place where he was going to then deposit all his stuff and he got caught on the way. Or the other thing I thought that he's just kind of like, without help, he is not able to really fend for himself. And so he just decided to keep everything, with him until he was in a better position. So I don't know.
It seems to me I could took the Hudson River out of there. I would have it all. It doesn't make any sense. And second of all, the fake ID he had on him was pretty high quality. So you have to ask where he got that. And I know you guys say he could have left the country. He would have already left the country if that was his plan. 7 days later and he's still in the country and not far from where the crime happened. Something is not right on all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing is kind of head scratching. Here's this guy. So they Luigi just screamed at the reporters and struggled with police as he was escorted into court. Let's watch this.
Don't.
Luigi, oh my God, that's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Yes, they don't want to make it a statement to the press. He said it's completely out of touch and an insult to the American people. All right, I don't.
Did they need that many cops for that one kid?
Well, I mean, he's a valedictorian, Joe. He might have outsmarted them or something. I don't. Well, here's what I don't understand is this. I mean, I understand it, but it disgusts me to see is how so many people are just kind of like, oh, this guy deserved it, or they're just kind of saying that this guy is not totally evil. I mean, anybody who walks up to somebody in the street to murder them is totally evil. I mean, let's just be honest. Let's see. Random PMW guy 84 for $2 says, do you think he wanted to get caught so he could spread his message in court?
No, because he would have then just remained at the scene.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have taken 7 days to get him if he wanted to get caught.
Let's see. It says here the New York Police Department in Manhattan District Attorney's Office is seeking the defendant's extradition pursuant to a warrant of arrest. The criminal complaint against Mangione in New York has yet to be made public. In New York, criminal complaints remain closed until the defendant is arraigned. NYC, the New York City prosecutors charged Mangione with murder late Monday night, according to court records. He was slapped with a criminal possession of a weapon, possession of a forged instrument, and criminal possession of a firearm suppressor, and the killing of Thompson 1 week ago outside the Midtown Manhattan hotel. Let's see, anything else? Talk about the whole. I think the only reason why the public was fascinated by his weapon was the fact that nobody had ever seen anybody assassinated with a silenced pistol before. Even though that's it's not anything
According
new.
to the movies, it happens all the time.
I know, right? Honestly, this is the first legit use of that I've ever seen.
But it's not the first use of a homemade firearm in an assassination, because Shinzo Abe was killed with a homemade firearm.
Right, and that was janky as hell too. That wasn't.
It was literally like two pieces of iron nailed to a 2x4 with a battery attached. So,
let's see. Former schoolmates of the private Gilman School in Baltimore said that Mangione's family had reached out to them this year, saying that he's been trying to contact their son for several months following back surgery. It sounds to me like this guy kind of went off the deep end. He was a fairly normal kid, it sounds like, until he went off the deep end after this back surgery. And Joe, pain and injury and things like this can make people do a lot of stupid things. And get just emotionally damaged. And that's exactly the kind of person like Antifa and some of these other left-wing groups look for to influence them, to whisper in their ear about it's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. They did this to you.
This is a classic person who is up for manipulation. And I every time we have one of these big high-profile shootings, the person always has some sort of a easy to manipulate issue that leads to this. I tell people again, watch The Bourne Legacy, learn something. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Enough of that. Anyway, we'll be seeing more of this case, I'm sure, in the near future. All right. This next story is it could only happen in Haiti. Literally, I think this could only happen in Haiti is how I would title this. Let's see. Let's share here. 180 dead. Haitian warlord orders a massacre of elderly for using sorcery to sicken son. Well, sorcery, I guess, right? What are you going to do? Yet another gruesome gang horror has played out in Haiti. At least 184 people, most of them elderly, were variously slashed, hacked, or shot to death on the order of a warlord who had been advising that aging slum residents had used sorcery to get his son a severe illness. I guess this teaches you not to cast a spell on a Haitian warlord's son, or else this happens. Interim Prime Minister Félix Amé called it a barbaric act of unbearable cruelty. The brutality was reportedly ordered by Monel Meccano Felix, who leads the Wharf Germain gang. The carnage took place on Friday and Saturday in a densely populated seaside slum of Cité Soleil, a neighborhood in the capital city of Port-au-Prince. While the Guardian has called Haiti's most notorious slum, much more of a slum is an open sewer. Infant children bathe in the water contaminated with sewage. The stench is unbearable. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just can't believe that Haiti hasn't just fallen into the ocean at this point.
Well, the Dominican Republic keeps them from doing so. So
I know, right?
They're on the same island. I would think it would tip over based on the number of people there. But
this just goes to show you the legacy of the French, right? This is why,
never trust the French.
I mean, Spain, they were bad guys too back in the 1600s, but Dominican Republic was fine.
I'll say the Spanish side of the island's doing just fine. So,
according to a human rights group, Felix's son had contracted a serious illness, and maybe it's because he lived by an open pit sewer and not the sorcery. And he sought the counsel of a voodoo priest, or Boko, who advised the murderous warlord that elderly people in the gang's area of operation were harming his son through the use of witchcraft. He decided to cruelly punish all the elderly people and voodoo practitioners who, in his imagination, might be capable of sending an evil spell to his son. Well, isn't he one of the voodoo practitioners? I mean, did he start with this voodoo priest that he went to? I mean, that would at least be consistent.
Is he from Haiti? Then yes.
Once again, not a problem you would have anywhere else. By the way, I just want to notice what's sticking out underneath this this picture of the burning tires.
Yeah.
That's Haiti for you. Members of the gang surrounded the neighborhood, then proceeded to search the shacks for people over 60 years old who were then hacked with machetes, slashed with knives, and shot with guns. The victims included some younger people who tried to defend the gang's elderly targets. The bodies were dragged to the street and were then mutilated and torched. Of course they were, filling the neighborhood with a foul stench of death. I mean, it just gets better and better. The collapse is definitely here. And these people
guys have some pretty spectacular collapse outfits on.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe they're getting ready for the riots that they're expecting to break out in the wake of Daniel Penny's acquittal. Maybe that's either that, or they're getting ready to come across the border right before before Donald Trump takes over. Given Haiti's police force has been plagued by mass desertions, the country's deep descent into chaos that promised rings hollow, to say the least, these latest killings bring the death toll in Haiti this year to a staggering number of 5,000. Joe, I know the Monroe Doctrine tells us to kind of, keep mind of what's going on in the Western Hemisphere, but man, I have a hard time thinking that we should get anyhow involved in the mess in Haiti. And what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, my take on it is that if you go back in history and you pick any particular moment in Haitian history, it sounds just like this.
Right.
With the exception of when it was ruled by Smedley Butler. And that's about it. So I think that Haitian's going to Haiti. And this is just just one of those things. I mean, it's their culture. It's been like this forever. Intervention after intervention by foreign power after foreign power hasn't changed it. And the Kenyan intervention, I know that the people there kind of thought this would be great because it's Africans finally intervening in a predominantly African colony, so to speak, right? Colony of Africans, but it hasn't changed it any. It's entirely the same. So it's just the way that it is. Right?
Yeah, I think this is one of those kind of things where we got to keep other countries out of Haiti, but we just have to leave Haiti alone and let Haiti fix Haiti. Maybe if somebody gets some gumption there, then we back hit that person with some gumption, and even if he's a bit of a strong man, but ultimately they just got to like fix their own damn problems.
The problem with Western society is that we can't leave well enough alone. We see a situation like this and we think, well, we have to help these poor people, which, you know what, that might be the right thing. But some people don't want to be helped. They don't want to change their culture because that's who they are. And so you can do all you want and spend all the money and lose all the troops you want trying to do this, but it just continues to go back to the same thing. So at some point you have to wash your hands of it. And that's even biblical because it says in the Bible, try and help people twice. And after that, you just wash your hands of them. So,
Joe, I will remind the chat that if you're interested in these problems in Haiti, I would recommend checking out the Revolutions podcast. I think it's the 3rd season, and that's the one that talks. No, 3rd season. I think maybe it's the 4th season. Anyway, the one on Haiti is excellent, and it kind of breaks down what the hell happened in Haiti and how it essentially became a perpetual basket case. It's basically a slave rebellion. They killed all the French, and then they took them. Then they owned themselves as slaves. Once the former slaves were in power, then they started, enslaving their own people. And then the ones that they didn't, they killed. And, it was just a mess of bloodletting in perpetuity with some very small, periods of relative peace in there. But
those periods of relative peace are all enforced. They're all enforced upon them by an outside power. And that's, it's the same thing that we see in places like Rwanda, in some places in the South Pacific, like Papua New Guinea. If the Australians left there, it would descend into violence almost immediately.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that certain parts of the world and certain cultures have these issues. It's going to be that way.
Well, right. And we can't fix everybody's problems.
Correct.
Let's move. Speaking of, we've got our own problems. We can't fix other people's problems when we have our own problems. State Department scrambles to scuttle $100 million censorship network before Trump takes office. Now, there was an episode of Joe Rogan recently where his guest, and I can't remember his name, I think it's like Mike Benz or somebody like that, where he goes into depth on the entire censorship regime of the CIA and the State Department. And pretty interesting stuff. And he talks here about the Global Engagement Center. So if you want a kind of a primer on a lot of that stuff, I would recommend that episode. It's basically 2 hours and 45 minutes of just an expert talking to Joe about censorship and political manipulation by the CIA and the kind of the deep state. And Joe didn't talk a whole lot because Joe, I think, didn't know any of this stuff. And so it's like, if you don't know anything, you just kind of shut up and let the expert talk. So it was a good one. No ayahuasca talk. No, none of the smoking dope talk. It was all focused on the business at hand. State Department revealed on Monday filing that they are substantially likely to shut down their $100 million Global Engagement Center, which was revealed in early 2023 to have been funding a disinformation tracking group which work to pressure advertisers to demonize outlets it accused of spreading disinformation. Except they're really just realigning the center staff and funding the other department offices and bureaus for foreign information manipulation. Joe, I can accept a little bit of foreign information and disinformation, like pointing our information operation tools out into the world against countries, specifically adversary countries. I can accept that. But when you turn that shit on Americans, which is exactly what they did during the Biden administration, and they began it back in the Obama administration, no way. That shit's got to go.
That's not good. And yes, we need to not be doing that.
Well, the CIA were the ones that originally started doing that stuff, kind of like the Project Mockingbird stuff, kind of, but in the foreign media, right? Buying coverage and things like that to influence foreign publics. But, after, the Church Committee, I know some people don't think that was, they think that was kind of like a whitewashing, but after the Church Committee, a lot of the inward facing kind of things got the kibosh put on it. So a lot of the programs that were inward facing left the CIA and went into the State Department and some of these academic organizations that work for colleges but are funded through State Department and even CIA grants. As far as policing misinformation and things like this. Let's see. The move comes amidst a lawsuit from Texas AG Ken Paxton and several conservative media outlets listing a GEC-funded dynamic exclusion list of websites it doesn't like, which it would then distribute to ad tech companies such as Microsoft, Xandr, and in order to try and defund and downrank these worst offenders and deprive said sites of ad revenue. I mean, so this is the guy I was just talking about. Let me play this clip here.
This
is a bit long, so I probably won't play the whole thing, but we'll do like maybe the first 2 minutes.
Idea that ISIS was recruiting on Facebook and Twitter gave a license to the State Department to create this thing called the Global Engagement Center, which was really the first official censorship capacity in the U.S. government. It predated the DHS stuff that would come along in the Trump era. And this gave the State Department the direct back channel, the direct coordinating capacity with all the social media companies to tell them about ISIS accounts, ISIS narratives that were trending. The Pentagon poured hundreds of millions of dollars into developing a technique called natural language processing, which is a way to use AI to scan the entire internet for keywords. And you would have these academic researchers effectively constructing code books of language. What do ISIS advocates or supporters talk like? What words do they use? What prefixes and suffixes? This whole lexicon is then conjoined with the ingested sum of all of their tweets and transcribed YouTube videos and Facebook posts. And then suddenly the State Department is a real-time heat map of everyone who is likely to be or hits a certain confidence level of being suspected to support ISIS. That was 2014 to 2016, set up by this guy, Rick Stengel, who described himself as Obama's propagandist in chief. He's now on the advisory board of NewsGuard, one of the largest censorship mercenary firms in the world.
Well, that's exactly where he would go, right? Someplace that polices the media. This is just so Orwellian. Just the nature of this kind of. It's not even like a disinformation. Joe, this is like censorship. Hey, we want people not to be able to talk about certain things. And we're not talking like Afghans or Iraqis or Syrians. We're talking about like American people. This is the kind of if anything in my mindset went on the chopping block as far as people that need to go in front of the Justice Department to sing for their sentence, it's these people. Joe, I mean, what's your kind of take on this?
Well, I think that when this kind of stuff comes out, it surprises people that our government does this. But I think guys like you and me, we kind of were aware this was going on, right?
Yeah.
It's where a lot of your intelligence leads come from, right? Or investigative leads in other fields come from this kind of analysis of language and analysis of what's going on. It doesn't surprise me they would do this, and then we would try to create accounts to change that. But then, like you said, once it was turned and weaponized internally, that's one of the bigger problems, right? So, what are the odds that the FBI did a similar program, but instead of ISIS, they targeted Q followers or folks who were part of the Tea Party movement or the Patriot movement and things like that? If you think they're not doing that, you're not paying any attention at all. And I think that's exactly where you get these groups out of Michigan who all got rolled up. They said, what's the group of people who really don't like their governor or the government and are most likely to go along with a crazy plot? And their computer prints it all out, and they go for it. There was an interesting TV show about this a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, a few years ago, called Person of Interest with Jim Caviezel and others, where there's this all-seeing and all-hearing computer that picks who is the next target and things like that. So this is entirely possible our government does that a whole lot more. So
let's see. Where was the one I'm looking for here? I can accept that in theory, Scott, but they've shown that they can't be trusted with that. Always turns inward and ready-made. Yeah, I agree, right? I mean, so it's kind of like I accept academically that we should be able to do information operations at a national level against our kind of adversaries, right? But here's the thing. It's one thing to let the military do that with clear kind of guidance, because they don't like the way military operations work is they don't have ongoing programs all the time, right? They are given a task, they execute it, and when that task is done, they stop, they train for the next opportunity, but they don't continue things. The problem with the way this worked, Joe, is that they set these ongoing programs up within the State Department, I guess, or within academics, settings, that just they turned them on and they just kept funding them every year. They get new grants or whatever, and with very little guidance.
It's very similar to the Department of Defense directive that's issued on the gathering of criminal intelligence or intelligence information on U.S. persons during civil unrest. There's all these rules and requirements, right, about you. Even if you gather intelligence on Antifa, for example, you have to destroy it as soon as the protest is over. Do you think they really do that? Do you think they actually follow it? They just transfer it to another agency to hold on to, right? It is not supposed to be transferred. It's not supposed to even be shared, but it still does. And we create all these new rules, but we do turn these tools inward all of the time.
So look here. According to revelations from the Twitter files, a trove of internal records about censorship decisions made within the social media company, the GEC-funded groups such as the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research. By the way, the Atlantic Council, we haven't really talked about the Atlantic Council here on Future Conflict, but if somebody causes trouble in the United States, I bet the Atlantic Council has something to do with it. At some
you mean
point.
The public-facing front of the people who rule the world from Davos?
Well, right. The Atlantic Council is the part that I can't remember if that's which one that's aligned with. I think it's the State Department. Anyway,
it is aligned with the State Department. Yeah.
Yeah. And so essentially. What was that? Okay, anyway, so let me go back here, which turned in a compiled list of Twitter accounts that were supposedly tied to foreign disinformation campaigns. Digital Forensic Research Laboratory sent those blacklists to Twitter so the company could deactivate accounts. So, least risky: NPR, AP News, New York Times, ProPublica, Insider, USA Today, Washington Post, BuzzFeed, So left wing, all the left wings are least risky. Riskiest sites: New York Post, Reason Magazine, Real Clear Politics, The Daily Wire. Well, that's The Blaze, One American, OAN, American Conservative, The Federalist, Newsmax, and American. Gosh, Joe, that's
It's
I
almost
almost
like there's a direct line down the middle. Huh. Weird.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I thought there was another video here, but I guess not. Anyway, there's no way to combat Russian and Chinese misinformation without the GEC. Bullshit. Bullshit. All right. Joe, you want to talk a little bit about the tactical-wisdom.com, what you're doing over there?
I can. All right. Last night on Twitter, I posted a list of the upcoming classes here at Camp Ponderosa. So check that out and get signed up. First class we have coming up is a stick and knife defense class, which will be kind of fun. And that's given on the same weekend that Combat Studies Group will be here doing Ground Rod 2. So if you're coming to one class, think about taking another one. We're going to try to do that a lot this year, wrapping 2 or 3 classes together so that if somebody takes vacation time, they can actually get a couple different classes in from different people. I know Matt and I added another class to our week in May. Last year, we did a big week-long set of classes in May. It was really well received. We had 50-something people come through it. We added another one. We snuck in a nighttime operations course. So we'll be doing RTO course, which is all radio, a SIGINT course, a night vision course, followed by my community security class. All in a week. You take about 10 days. You can get all that done. That's really just a week with both weekends wrapped around it. And you can get all kinds of cool training done. I've got books for sale. You might not have known that. It's time to order books, T-shirts, and patches. If you want them to arrive before Christmas, head over to Tactical-Wisdom. That stuff figured out. A lot of neat stuff. Also, I'm confirming for everyone, because I know there's been some doubt with my I will definitely be over at NC Scouts Place in February for the Scout and Recce course. In fact, just before the Scout and Recce course, I'll be running a Fieldcraft course down there to give guys the added skills to do well in the Scout and Recce course. And that one, we're doing the same thing. We're going to have my course, then Scout, then Recce, and then fighting Kalashnikov on the following weekend. So I know that Hunch is planning on coming down, and it'll be a good time. A lot of fun. A lot going on.
Yep. Yeah, sounds like the place to be. Honestly, I wish I could be there. You were talking about in your most recent article, you were talking about skills other than kind of like just like lethal skills, right?
Well, that was actually 2 articles ago because we got one out about getting uncomfortable. That's out right now.
But anyway, that's right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking. I reread a portion. I guess it was Monday about the skills one. So it was just kind of in the back of my head.
And not everything can be resolved by a firearm, and some things are better resolved quietly. Knives and sticks are quiet. So.
Well, and your neighbors don't get woke up in the middle of the night by them either. So.
Right. It's way easier to drag a guy over to the pig pen when he's unconscious. I'm just throwing that out there.
All right. Let's jump into our Syria discussion. This might go a little quicker because we've kind of covered some of this stuff in previous episodes, but this is just the further continuation of stuff that we've already been talked about. No need for maps here because the good guys have taken over the entire country, right? And if by good guys you mean Israel, well then no, they haven't. But they do have some new land. IDF tanks reach just 25 kilometers from Damascus, as Netanyahu declares Golan is ours forever. Interesting. Joe, did you hear this quote?
Yeah, I didn't actually hear him say this. I heard the rest of the speech he gave, but I didn't hear him say it forever.
Yeah,
I heard him say they were going to hold it until an alternative solution presents itself. So.
Well, I think that's some of that barrier, the new land, the what did they call? What are they calling
this
it?
is part of it.
This
mountain
says here,
is the far end of it.
Yeah. But I don't think that's part of the Golan Heights. That's the part that's north of the Golan Heights, right? I can't remember.
I mean, immediately north, like it's attached to, but okay.
With the Assad overthrown and the Syria in shambles, Israel has declared the permanent annexation of the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights, announced Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel. He said that the control over the historic Syrian territory guarantees Israel's security and sovereignty and is of great importance. The announcement came as Israel pounded with airstrikes numerous Syrian bases, abandoned army assets, parked warplanes and helicopters, even naval ships off Latakia. The attacks kept going through the night, as Israeli and international sources describe. Regional security sources and officers within the now fallen Syrian army who spoke to Reuters described Tuesday morning airstrikes as the heaviest yet, hitting military installations and air bases across Syria, destroying dozens of helicopters and jets, as well as Republican Guard assets in and around Damascus. So it says here the tally of 200 raids. My understanding is it is almost 500 raids now at this point. There is nothing left of any Syria. Of any Syrian Air Force or Navy components, is my understanding at this time. Netanyahu further hailed the signals the start of a new and dramatic chapter in the history of the Middle East. IDF's tanks are closer to the Syrian capital now than ever before. And so this is from the Times of Israel. It says an Israeli military incursion into southern Syria reached 25 kilometers southwest of the capital of Damascus. Two regional security sources and one Syrian security source said. The Syrian security source says Israeli troops reached Kantana, which is 10 kilometers into Syrian territory east of the demilitarized zone separating the Golan Heights from Syria. Despite the claims, the IDF has indicated that it only plans to operate on the ground inside the buffer zone and not beyond it. You know, Joe, I don't blame Israel in the slightest for this. I mean,
I mean, if your nearest neighbor is taken over by people who hate you, you're probably going to want to do something about it and create sort of a tripwire to protect yourself, and that's all that they've done. The Russians flipped off the switch on the Syrian ADA system when they left, and this is the direct result of it. It proves that Israel's had the capability to absolutely devastate the Syrian defense forces if they wanted to, and just haven't been able to because the air defense system provided by the Russians was still up and running. It's also why all of a sudden you've seen so many American strikes against ISIS in this. Is now there is literally no Syrian air defense network, and we're able to do whatever we want at will, wherever we want throughout Syria, instead of just in the territory we control.
Well, ironically, until HTS stands up a fully realized government, essentially, not only is there no air defense grid, but there's no government to complain to Israel about, hey, you blew up our airplanes or you blew up our ships, It's basically free cheese.
Yeah. Yeah, Durna, that's an interesting point on the map there, right? The legend is a little bit off.
Occupied Palestine. Yeah.
It seems to be all of Israel. I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean, what's crazy is besides that one little piece of information, this is actually a fairly correct map from everything that I know.
Uh-huh.
They haven't gone really into Syria down here on the southern end of the Golan Heights. It's just mostly. And specifically, it's this mountain right here that they want because they said they wanted to set up radar because that provides a radar blind spot. This high ground through here provides a radar blind spot for drones that are seeking to enter Israel. So evidently they're going to set up a radar station here, to better secure that area. Let's see. The IDF has acted in the last few days to attack and destroy strategic capabilities that threaten the state of Israel. This is Katz, the defense minister. He warned rebels that whoever follows ousted President Bashir al-Assad's footstep will end up like Assad did. We won't allow an extremist Islamic terror entity to act against the state of Israel from beyond its borders. Well, Joe, when HTS sets up, there's no way in hell they're going to be like, hey, we'll be buddies with you, Israel.
Al-Qaeda, but yes. There's so much, we're going to talk about it a little bit later on the thing, but there's so much that the American media is trying to whitewash HTS so badly. And this is just one part of it. And Israel's not buying it. They're like, nah, yeah. I know who these people are. We've been dealing with them for a long time and all that. It's getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's the whitewash is absolutely the best way to put it. Also on Sunday into Monday, Israeli warplanes also targeted Syria's chemical weapons stockpile. There we go. We talked about that on Monday, you remember? Yep. But it's unlikely they were able to destroy anything. More sporadic attacks are expected, and the situation remains extremely fluid and unpredictable. Here's the thing, Joe. This new government of Syria is going to be at such a disadvantage because they don't have a lot of military assets. I mean, they got a bunch of guys with AKs, right? But that's about it. They got a bunch of pickup trucks. They got some tanks. They got a few APCs. Not a lot. They've got very little technical help because who the hell wants to get involved with Al Qaeda, right? They hate Iran. They hate Russia. They only are allied with Turkey because, Turkey hasn't turned on them yet. And Turkey will turn on them eventually. Either that or they'll completely subsume them. So this country is going to be kind of sucking hind tit for a while. Don't you think, Joe?
Yeah, but what's the difference? All we did here is trade one dictator for another. You just have a different flavor. We went from Alawite to Shia.
Sunni.
Sunni, yeah. I mean, yeah. I was going to say Sunni too, and I don't know why I didn't. But, because I was talking about Iraq over here. Same problems, right? Sunni versus Shia everywhere. But, all we do is trade one stripe for another, and it is going to be a problem. And I feel most for the innocent people of Syria who are stuck in the middle of all this, and everyone in the West is acting like Syria is free and great now, and that's just not the case. It was even CNN interviewed that woman who was out there with her hair uncovered and celebrating her new freedom. That woman has no idea what's about to happen to her, and she'll probably end up hanging from a rope for walking around, well, stoned, I guess, not hung. They don't hang women; they throw rocks at them. She'll end up being stoned for not wearing a head covering, guaranteed.
Well, speaking of the bona fides of the new regime, I thought this was interesting. So this section of the show is focusing on the interactions with Syria and the international audience or the international arena. Taliban and Hamas congratulate Syrian people and Giuliani after Assad fall. I wanted to say Giuliani because I've been listening to his audiobook.
No, that's just harsh.
I know. Anyway, let's see what we got to have. Well, the Taliban soldiers are definitely rocking a higher quality of guns here. I mean, almost exclusively with ACOGs, M4s. I mean, that's pretty...
almost like somebody left them a pile on purpose.
Exactly right. The hardline and extremist Islamic groups Hamas and the Taliban have been amongst the first regional entities to offer congratulations to the Islamist-led rebels and Syrian people after the overthrow of the government of President Bashir al-Assad. Afghanistan's Taliban government announced the following on Sunday, soon after Al-Qaeda spinoff HTS. Correct. That this is exactly correct what they are. They are a spinoff of Al-Qaeda. Gained control of the presidential palace and government ministries. We express hope that the process of power transition can be carried out in a manner aligned with the aspirations of the Syrian people, paving the path for an establishment of an independent and service-oriented Islamic government. And by service, we mean, stoning women and hanging, people.
Everyone thinks that folks in the Middle East want Jeffersonian democracy. They do not. It is not their way.
They most decidedly do not. Right. And their culture isn't even suited for it.
It is not. It is not.
A foreign ministry statement said calling for Syria to be able to move forward free from external influence. You know what? I agree with them. We should leave them the fuck alone. We should get our ass out of there. I don't mind leaving leaving some guns or whatever for the Kurds on our way out, but that's it. The chuck wagon is not making any more stops to this part of the world. We got our own shit to take care of in the Western Hemisphere. We'll be over there kicking ass. If you want to be,
good old Joe Biden said you're going to be provided them with some cash. So,
well, the good news is that can't last long. So, knock on wood, we'll be able to affect that differently in the near future. Hamas in Gaza had a similar message. I don't know how Hamas in Gaza even puts anything out, communicates anything. I mean, those guys are living in fucking bunkers all the time. Praising the Syrian people for achieving their aspirations for freedom and justice. In Hamas' first public statement on the Syrian crisis, the group said, "We stand strongly with the great people of Syria and respect the will." Even though Assad was the one that was helping Hamas, I wonder how Assad sitting in Moscow thinks about all these countries that are just, piling on to give kudos to, especially his former allies, right?
I don't know. Assad's sitting in Moscow counting the money. So,
yeah, I'm curious how much he got away with it, because they said he had several hundreds of millions, probably billions, I would assume.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That's probably he probably had turned over a fair amount of that for his room and board for the next 40 years.
I don't know. I think his dad had this escape route set up decades ago. He just took advantage of it. So
I don't disagree with that at all. The head of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad also issued a congratulations offering similar words. All of the aforementioned groups are considered terrorists by the Washington. Yeah, well. But in the case of HTS, which now rules Damascus and much of the major cities of Syria, Washington and London are reportedly mulling over where to drop the former terror listing. Oh, because these guys are the good guys now, aren't they, Joe? I mean, we can't show the footage of the public executions and the return to Sharia and all this kind of stuff that we're already starting to see. Women getting in the street as well. The Israeli government has issued a warning. Now, so at least Israel is like, they're not, smoking pot or anything over there, because they're down to earth. They've issued a warning to HTS and the jihadist factions in Damascus, saying that they will go the way of Assad if they threaten Israel. IDF tanks are meanwhile just about 25 kilometers to the south of Damascus after moving in the countryside ostensibly to secure a buffer zone. Let's see what Alawite Muslim Defense League has to say here. Yep. Anyway, so let's see. Is there anything interesting? Nope. This guy just needs a shave, and he can't afford a razor. Well, there's that. Taliban in Latakia today didn't enter Alawite villages, but they are in the city coast. Says, we conquered Levant for Islamic Sharia than to defeat polytheism. All right. At least they have got clear objectives there, Joe. The head of HTS and the new ruler of Damascus, Julani, had his victory speech at a mosque, praised the heroic Mujahideen. Today, Syria is purified thanks to God Almighty, and thanks to God Almighty, and then thanks to the heroic Mujahideen. He and his fighters have long been on records as seeking an establishment of an Islamic state and governance based on Sharia law. The Assad government had represented the last secular state in the Middle East belonging to the Ba'ath Party. Joe, it's always like, be careful what you wish for, right? You just might get it.
You just might get it. It's interesting, though. I've still been thinking about it, what you said back there, when they said polytheistic.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as secular, right? That's multiple gods, not multiple religions. So,
right. Yeah, I
don't turn of phrase.
Well, they have that in quotation marks, so that might be the words that that they're using. I don't know. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that may be the words they're using. That doesn't mean they're the right words.
Right.
I like a random PMW guy 84 for $5 says, so what's next for Assad? Set up a private practice eye clinic in Moscow? Maybe. Stranger things have happened, right?
No, I think he's going to live like a king in Moscow. So.
Well, but the interesting thing, I mean, there is probably a dissident Arab community within Moscow, like long-term, yeah. But I wonder if, because, I think the wife that he had was there because he was the president of Syria, not because she was in love with him. I wonder how that whole family dynamic is going to work.
I think she knows that the minute she leaves him, she is dead. So I don't think that's going to.
I agree with you. I'm just saying.
But I'd also challenge any dissident Syrians who live in Moscow are probably very supportive of Bashar al-Assad as opposed to opposing him. So.
Yeah, well, it's working against the will of the FSB within Russia is generally not something to.
It's not a long-term strategy.
It is not. All right, the final international kind of story of international coincidence here is this is an interesting one. I was not expecting when I first saw this. As you know, Joe, there are a lot of Syrian refugees in Europe now. I think upwards of 5 million in Europe. Germany's 1 million Syrians at center of fierce debate over their future. Future? What future? Send them home. Across Germany, Syrians have been celebrating in the streets the downfall of former President Bashar al-Assad. But now many will be feeling less euphoric as some politicians question their future in Germany. Yeah, Assad's gone.
Yes, both the AFU and the Christian Democratic Union. So both sides of the political spectrum in Germany are saying, hey, it's a good chance to offload the 1 million Syrians we have taken in.
Well, and AFD's like, welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah, AFD. Yeah. I'm so used to saying the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, that creeped in there.
Let's see. There are about 1 million people with Syrian passport in Germany. Most of them came from 2015 to 2016 after Angela Merkel's government made a decision not to close Germany's borders to refugees fleeing Syria's civil war. The mood at the time was that Germany would manage. Climate now is rather different. Within hours of the news of Assad's fall, a fierce political debate erupted in Germany over whether Syrian refugees should go back to Syria. Snap elections are being held in Germany. That's right. I forgot about the elections that are getting ready to come up on 23 February, with migration topping surveys of voters' concerns. Some politicians clearly feel talking tough on Syrian refugees will win them votes. Conservative hardliners and far-right politicians are arguing that Syrians had fled to Germany to escape Assad, and they can immediately now return back to Syria. Some right-wingers want to stop granting asylum to people from Syria immediately. I would agree with that. If the reason for asylum disappears, there's no longer a legal basis to stay in the country. Jen Spahn, the deputy leader of the conservative CDU parliament group, has suggested chartering planes, giving Syrians €1,000 to leave the country. Here's $1,000. Get the fuck out of here. Whoever Germany,
$1,000 will go a lot farther in Syria than it will in Germany. So
I know it's not the worst deal ever, right? Go to a country, at least you can speak the language, and you have maybe familial and community ties with €1,000 in your pocket, or stay in a country that is literally hating on you. Whoever in Germany celebrates a free Syria obviously has no reason anymore to have fled. The leader of the far-right AfD party posted on X, he should go back to Syria immediately. Let's see. This year, Sarah Wagenknecht, who this year set up a new anti-migrant far-left populist party. That's what I like to hear. Echoed the AfD's rhetoric. She's the one that's actually a Nazi. If you're a far leftist, if you are an anti-migrant far left populist party, that's like another word for Nazi.
Right.
Echoed the AfD's rhetoric. I expect Syrians who are celebrating here the takeover of powers of Islamists to return back to their country as soon as possible. Right, exactly. They're celebrating Islamists, so they shouldn't have any problem going back to live under that kind of a country. Left-wing and Green politicians, meanwhile, have expressed outrage, calling such comments irresponsible, populist, and inappropriate. Joe, when did being a populist become a bad word?
I don't know. I'm
all that means
right now.
All that means is that you just you're interested in issues that most of the people are interested in.
Populist. The whole thing about populism is that that's the point I've been making the whole time, is that that's not a bad thing. That's what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
The opposite of populism is elitism.
Right.
That's
exactly
a bad
right.
thing.
Exactly right. Let's see. Excuse me. Whoever tries to misuse the current situation in Syria for their own political parties' purposes has lost touch with the reality in the Middle East. This is a green foreign minister said. No one can predict today and in the next few days what will happen in Syria and what this means for security policy. All those who start now talking about deportations to Syria are, and excuse me for the language, quite simply depraved scumbags. I mean, that's, but that's a radical leftist, who is counting on these Syrians to vote for her. On Monday, Germany's Federal Office for Migration and Refugees put on hold all pending applications from Syrian asylum seekers. This affects 47,000 Syrians in Germany who are waiting for an answer to their application for asylum. In a written statement to the BBC, they said, based on the current situation and the unforeseeable developments, no final decision can currently be made on the outcome of asylum. So, yeah, Joe, this is this is interesting. It says here, many Syrians work in healthcare, including 5,000 Syrian doctors. If the situation in Syria is unstable, it is unlikely that they would leave. You know what's interesting? What would be interesting would be to go through the roles and go, nope. Yep. Let's invite him to stay. Nope. Yep. There's another, you know what I'm saying? Like picking and choosing. That would be exactly the way the Germans would do it, I think.
It would be crazy if, say, they had a process where you filled out an application, you told them what you brought to this country and why you needed to leave the one that you were a citizen of. Like every country had prior to about, say, 2016 or so.
Exactly right.
It's just silly. There should be an application process. There should be a review. There should be interviews. And there should be a decision made on whether this person is, a security risk. That should be problem number one. 2, do they have something to contribute to the new society they're going to? And 3, do they have a real reason to fear persecution in the land they left? Most of them, the answer is no on all counts.
Well, the other thing, Joe, is that, like, let's say you got a doctor, like a pediatrician, right? He was a pediatrician in Damascus, and he fled because his brother was killed by Assad, right? I'm just making up a fictional person, right? And he fled early on, and he brought his family, his 2 daughters and a wife, with him to Germany. And he was given, and he's like, "Listen, I'm a doctor. I'd like to begin practice here." And they said, "Okay, here's a German course. You have to be able to speak German, and you have to be able to do X, Y, and Z. You do this course to make sure that tests that your skills are up to our standards." He takes the test, gets his license to practice medicine in Germany, right? Here's what I think they should do with a guy like that. If they decide this guy has been here for 9 years, he's been a contributing member to society. Here's what we're going to do. Hey, Muhammad, thank you for being here. What we're going to do is we're going to send you back to Syria. But what we would love for you to do, you already speak German. You've been a great member of society. Go to the German embassy as soon as you get back to Syria and apply for application to become a permanent resident of Germany. Like a visa, and we will allow you and your family then to come back to Germany. I think that would be
the process. I think that's a great point. Another really big point is that the term doctor. There are doctors and there are doctors. Different countries have different standards. There's no internationally recognized standard to be called a doctor in the medical field. So a doctor from South America is not the same as a doctor here. A doctor from West Africa is not the same as a doctor in Central Europe. So you have to be very, very careful when you say, "Oh, well, 5,000 of the refugees are doctors." But are they, though? Are they really?
Yeah. Well, and so that, and I think what's more important is not what you did when you were in Syria, but where did you get your education? Oh, I got it from the University of Islamabad. All right. Keep on walking, buddy. Oh, I went to the University of Hamburg. Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Let's check your record. Oh, you did go to the university. Oh, you did go to medical school there, right? You actually got your medical degree in Germany. Well, then that would be a higher value than somebody who got it from Jim's School of Medicine over the AutoZone Institute of Foreign Affairs. So,
or the one from Marine Corps history, the St. George's College of Medicine on Grenada. So,
right, exactly right. Oh boy, all right. So I thought that was interesting. All right, let's go over to the other one. This is going to focus more about what the hell's happening inside of Syria. Now, Joe, you were talking about these poor ladies earlier. God help their future. Shaken by Assad's sudden fall, Syria faces seismic turning point. And so, of course, you've got these happy girls here that have no idea what they're getting ready to walk into. I mean, they honestly
think like there hasn't been an example anywhere in the world of what happens when Islamists take over the government.
Right. Well, here's the thing, right? I look at what Assad had as basically just a terrible authoritarian, kleptocracy, right? Whereas they're getting ready to go through basically an ISIS level, Sharia state. I get the feeling they're not going to be too happy about the outcome. In the end of the Assad regime, it was so hollow, corrupt, and decayed that it collapsed in less than a fortnight. No one I spoke to has seen anything other than the astonishment. No one I have spoken to has been anything other than astonished by the speed at which the regime turned to dust. In the spring of 2011, the year of the Arab uprising, it was different when Syrians tried to grab some revolutionary magic that had swept away the presidents of Tunisia and Egypt, was threatening veteran strongmen in Libya and Yemen. By 2011, the regime created by Hafez al-Assad had passed along to his son. Since his death in 2000, was already corrupt and decadent. It's hard to imagine now, but back then he had more legitimacy. Yeah, because if I remember correctly, before the Arab Spring, Assad had been kind of going through a series of reforms, and his wife was really kind of leading a lot of kind of liberalized, not, I would say not like government, but societally liberalizing a lot of things and bringing education to women and some of these European type deals, right?
You know why he became an international pariah and bad guy? He dared to defy the will of Barack Hussein Obama.
Yeah, well, we forget too quickly the entire Arab Spring and how that role came about.
And how did it work out in Egypt, by the way?
And Libya.
Yeah.
Let's see. Assad was a vocal supporter of the Palestinians and of Hezbollah during its successful fight against Israel in the 2006 Lebanon war. He was younger than the ex and soon-to-be former Arab leaders. Since his father's death, he had been promising reform. Some Syrians still wanted to believe him in 2011. Yeah, he was kind of long on promises, short on delivery. But ultimately, I think life was, slowly getting better, but just not to the pace that he kept promising. Hoping demonstrations were the spur he needed for that change. What's interesting is Assad could have actually come out smelling like a rose if he had just kind of, decided to ride the wave of revolutionary, versus fighting it. It's sad that the way things could have gone differently. A British ambassador in Syria once told me that the way to understand the Assad regime was to watch mafia films like The Godfather. The obedient could be rewarded. Anyone who went against the head of the family or his closest lieutenants would be eliminated. In Syria's case, this meant the gallows or a firing squad or indefinite incarceration in some underground. So did you see that prison, Joe, that they liberated? I know we talked a little bit about this on Monday, but...
Yeah.
I didn't really. They said that there were over like 40,000 people or something in that prison.
I don't believe that number is accurate. I think that's
it seemed high, but then again, I saw some of those cells and there were these just open bays where they had 25 dudes in there.
I'm sorry. Are you shocked about the conditions of third world jails?
No, not at all. I'm just saying they packed them in, is what I'm saying. It wasn't like they were sparsely populated, but still.
Wait until you hear about Africa.
Oh God, I've seen some pictures. Oh my God, a continent that I could go my entire life and never visit and still be happy. Let's see. We're seeing this now, emaciated and pale, blinking from the light, filmed on mobile phones. The rebel fighters who have freed them from years behind bars. The weakness of the regime to the point that it collapsed like a soggy paper bag was disguised by the fearsome and repulsive gulag it maintained. The international consensus was Assad was weak, dependent on Russia and Iran, and presiding over a country he had fractured to preserve his family's rule. You know what's interesting, Joe? He didn't even seem to have like a cadre of, like a Republican Guard, right? Like these are the guys that would stand and fight when everybody else runs. He didn't even have that.
I think anyone who would do that had already left and gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
Let me make a comment about the prison thing, and this is one of the problems that you deal with in the military police when liberating a country is how do you sort out the actual bad guys versus the political prisoners in any detention center that you come across. You have a real risk of, well, let's just let everyone go. Well, you're also letting out rapists and murderers and robbers when you do that. So you have to be very, very careful in all of that. The problem is in all of these countries, they're not real good at keeping records. So you don't know who is actually in prison for what when you arrive at one of these. So very interesting. Very tough job.
Josh, I resemble that remark. No, if South Africa and Rhodesia can be liberated, freed, and made peaceful again, I would consider.
Let us not forget North Rhodesia that everyone forgets about, Zambia.
Let's see. So yeah, Joe. One of the things that I'm hearing a lot of analysts say, and I don't know. I think there's something to this, but I don't know it's as key as they're thinking. Is that the Israeli destruction of basically Hamas and Hezbollah as effective fighting forces really was something that impacted Syria. It kind of put the lie to any strength of the block of those countries or military powers. What's your kind of take on that?
Say that again.
So Israel knocking down Hamas, basically eliminating them, right? And then decimating Hezbollah to the point where Hezbollah is basically having to retreat back into the Bekaa Valley and lick their wounds, and they're not effective at this point. Never mind the pager attacks and things like that. That these two events kind of chipped away at the power base that allowed then the Assad regime to kind of collapse.
Yes. I mean, Hezbollah is what propped him up for a long time, and now that's gone. So,
well, I guess my point is I think it contributed, but I don't think that's like the main thing, right? I think a lot of it was timing, honestly, on the part of Turkey and HTS. But ultimately,
yes,
I think this is going to be one of those kind of things. There's a lot of contributing factors to why it happened. And here's the other thing, Joe. I think Iran and Russia were distracted. And let's be honest, Syria was a lot of guys in uniform standing around in the desert that didn't want to fight.
That's true. But that's true of third world militaries in general, or especially Middle Eastern militaries. Yeah. I mean, we rolled the Iraqi army twice. The Iraqi army rolled the Kuwaiti army. And the only time I guess I really saw a big stand-up fight was Iran versus Iraq. But we rolled whatever was existent in the Afghan National Army the first time we went in, too. So largely conscript armies are like that.
Yeah.
They're not volunteer armies.
The damage Israel inflicted on Hezbollah and Iran with U.S. weapons and constant support, Biden's supply of arms for Ukraine made it impossible, even undesirable for Assad's closest allies to save him. But the fact that they I think the U.S. plays the part as well. I mean, so I don't think this happens without all these things kind of coming together. But the fact that they saw Assad as part of their strategy to contain and damage Iran until days before his fall indicates clearly that they did not, for a moment, believe him to be days away from a midnight flight to Russia. Joe, in all fairness, I thought Syria would hold out another full week than they did. Though by Friday, I was like, look, this shit could happen quick over the weekend. But when
given their problems with extremism within their own nation, I'm a little surprised that Turkey was so willing to go all in with HTS on this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, the other thing too, Joe, is that I kind of thought there was a lot of they were kind of over that the Syrian army was a little bit overextended. And so that when the shit started hitting the fan up in Aleppo, I thought maybe, okay, they're going to pull back to like Homs, right? And like they're going to draw the lines up. They sacrifice Hama and then draw the lines at Ham, and then because that would then anchor the portion where the Russians were by the coast, and then the Russians would come in and help save the day. That didn't happen.
I honestly thought we were going to see a fight involving actual Russian troops for Damascus, but there was literally no fight for Damascus. It was abandoned by then.
Yeah. There was no fight for Damascus at all. That's the thing that was kind of crazy to me. And that just kind of goes to show that I think the leadership in Syria, I think the reference in the article is correct, is that the leadership was more like gangsters than they're more like criminals than they were like government, type people. There was no national, like, I'm going to fight for Syria, or I'm going to fight for personal loyalty or whatever. No, it was just like, I'm out of here, So yeah, this is a long article. It's more of a narrative kind of thing. So it draws some parallels to Libya, and I think we're, like I said, we're going to be dealing with this for a long time to come. All right. And we talked a little bit about this already, and it's kind of, I think it's worth us kind of mentioning this. Because what's the new reality in Syria? Well, this is the new reality. Extremist groups carry out revenge and sectarian killings in HTS-controlled Syria.
What? I was assured by the media that was just right-wing hype.
Well, Joe, these the moderate is, rural rustic scholars, or whatever they are.
Austere religious scholars.
Extremist armed factions across Syria are carrying out executions of civilians and soldiers amid the chaos following the fall of the deposed Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government.
By extremist factions, they mean the actual new government. Let's just be honest here.
Yeah.
HTS is an extremist faction.
Derna, I think the key to getting a conscript to fight for his country is to link his efforts to that of his family.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I get it.
I think you have to link it to the conscripts, like, hey, listen, we got your family here. We're going to protect them and you're part of that. I think that's the way you have to kind of motivate.
The example used was World War II, and my point is that's just the scale was so different that a conscript was more willing to fight because of what had already happened so far, right? I mean, there's a big difference between World War II and the fights that we've had in the Middle East.
Yeah, I when I shared this, I had no awareness of any kind of ongoing discussion in the chat, but I just kind of talked to this point specifically. I do agree that can be motivated to fight for in an orderly society. I think you have to, it's like you have to have that in order for, it's like you either have that or you literally have fear. Like, like some of these militias in Africa where they would either, basically at gunpoint, right? Kidnap, child soldiers and things like that. Or hey, we got your family and we're going to kill them if you don't give it your all. All right. A video circulating on social media shows armed militants from HTS, the Al-Qaeda offshoot that took control of Damascus on Sunday, carrying out field executions of unarmed men in the village of Al-Rabia, in the countryside of Latakia. The militants referred to the men as Shabiha, a derogatory term long used for pro-government Syrian soldiers and civilians. HTS Military Operations Administration reported ongoing clashes near there and the encirclement of a group of officers inside a fortified farm village. The Syrian Observer for Human Rights on Tuesday, according to its sources, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army carried out executions and assaulted properties of nearly 30,000 Kurdish families in Manbij city. Yeah, did you see this? This is the Syrian National Army, which are the ones that are directly supported by Turkey, not and different from HTS. That they went into a hospital and found YPD fighters who were in the hospital beds and just executed them in their hospital beds. It was crazy. On Monday, ISIS militants killed 54 Syrian armed soldiers who were fleeing an attack by the terror group in the central province of Homs. Let's see. SNA burned houses of civilians, stole their property, and executed at least 3 people, including a woman. Yeah, so I'm not going to play the video, but basically, Al-Nusra Front gangs are tying people to the backs of cars and dragging their bodies through the streets.
So here's what's interesting: when they do something like take over the government, they're HTS. When something bad gets done, they're presented as Al-Nusra
or Al Qaeda,
or some sort of separation between the two. There is none. There is zero daylight.
It's just what they call themselves. That's it. That is the only difference. Is literally the name.
Yeah.
ISIS militants captured personnel fleeing military service in the desert during the collapse of the regime. Militants take cell phone video alleged Syrian armed soldiers and officers before executing them. And so that's this right here. This is a still from that. Syrian sources reported the assassination on Tuesday of Sheikh Tawfiq al-Budi and by unknown attackers. Abuti was the son of the well-renowned Sunni Muslim scholar Sheikh Mohammed Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti, who was assassinated along with 40 others in a mosque in 2013 by members of the Nusra Front, now known as HTS. I do like the fact that they keep reminding you that Nusra Front, HTS, and Al-Qaeda are really all the same in this article.
Yeah, they are all the same thing.
The elder Bouti was an advocate for Sufism and an opponent of Salafi interpretations of Islam that teach hatred against non-Muslims. Bouti was a strong supporter of Bashar al-Assad's government and spoke against the extremist armed groups attacking Syrian civilians, police, and soldiers during the war that began in 2011. So, yes, not a surprise. When Al-Qaeda comes to town, people are going to get strung up. Because that's how they roll. All right. Final story of the day here. This is from the war zone. New Syrian prime minister assumes power amid airstrikes and continued fighting. I thought I would just read a little bit of this, but then the rest of this is all video and pictures, so we can kind of go through here. Let's see. The Syrian rebels selected a new caretaker prime minister as the nation remains roiled by conflict after overthrowing dictator Bashar al-Assad. Mohammed al-Bashir assumes office on an interim basis amidst ongoing fighting in parts of the country, and as Israel and the U.S. take advantage of the post-Assad power vacuum in the form of mass airstrikes, as well they should. Bashir is a provincial leader aligned with HTS, the former al-Qaeda-linked group that led the lightning 11-day offensive that toppled Assad. Even these guys who are not what you'd call conservative journalists don't fail to mention that, hey, these guys are Al-Qaeda, just so you know. He will serve until March 1st, 2025. His appointment was announced after a meeting of the members of the old Assad government. Today, I will give them credit, Joe. They literally didn't just come in and execute the entire, former government of Assad, right? Like there's a meeting of like them sitting down with Assad's prime minister. I assume that these guys are going to go straight into jail, but ultimately you would expect them to be strung up and executed most of the time. So this kind of goes to that softer, kinder, more better tailored version of Al-Qaeda, I guess, that Biden and his guys are trying to pass off.
I like how CNN even tried to whitewash it and said, he traded off his camouflage coat for a blazer. He must be a good guy now.
He must be a good guy, right? Yeah. This is a quote here. He says, "Today we are meeting for a cabinet and we invited members of the old government and some directors from the administration in Idlib and its surrounding areas in order to facilitate all the necessary works for the next 2 months until we have a constitutional system able to serve the Syrian people. What do you think? What kind of government do you think comes out of this, Joe?
None. I believe it will collapse almost immediately under the weight of Islamic oppression and fighting between all of the various militias. Keep in mind, HTS still controls the smallest portion of territory of any of the other groups. There are still wide portions of the territory controlled by people directly opposed to HTS. So I don't think they're going to end up with a very functioning government for long.
Well, for me, Joe, I think the kind of the telling thing will be if anybody pops up to challenge them, right? Like so you've got the Kurds, but they're under kind of pressure right now, so they're just kind of in their own AO. Is anybody going to be in Damascus saying you shouldn't be the government? Like, are they able to actually consolidate power, in this kind of interim period? I don't know.
Funny, all of our talk about our democracy, we're celebrating an actual military overthrow with no popular mandate. If you ask the people of Syria if they wanted Al Qaeda to rule them, they probably are going to say no. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair though, right? I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing for them to say. Let me share my screen here so you guys can see my pictures. So they're like really churching this up, Joe. You can see here in the pictures here, they've got their like room, the hall with with all the people looking official and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're having a meeting. We've got a woman here. We grabbed a woman off the street and told her to shut up and sit down here and look good for the cameras. We got a regular flag and then a flag of Saudi Arabia with the wrong colors right here.
Flag of Saudi Arabia. You mean Al Shahada?
Yeah,
because that's what that is.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but the wrong colors. Theirs is green and white, whereas this is white and black. Oddly enough, the exact opposite colors of ISIS. What a coincidence. All right, moving on. So, we talked about the fact that the Navy of Syria is no more. I thought maybe we could. I don't need to hear it. But basically, this is the pier that was where there were like 5 patrol boats here. Now, granted, these are 60s era Soviet patrol boats, so they're not what you would call high tech, but they were what they were, and now they aren't anything.
Yeah, they were all coastal patrol boats. I think we left them with one Zodiac.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what happens when Israel decides they don't want you to have a navy anymore.
And it's somewhat amazing that Zodiac is still there,
right?
With all the shrapnel flying around.
Let's see. This is a guy. He's a IDF spokesperson. Says the report circulating in the media about the alleged advancement of Israeli tanks towards Damascus are false. The IDF troops were stationed with the area of separation to protect the state of Israel. I guess that's what they're calling it, the area of separation.
That's what it's called in the treaty from the end of the war in Lebanon. So
I guess they just decided to expand the area of separation a little bit. I don't blame them. I'm just saying.
They didn't expand it. They just seized the part that had been guaranteed security by the Syrian army. The SAA doesn't exist anymore, so
yeah. Well, yeah, right. So so to that point here, Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia have condemned Israel's incursion, accusing it of exploiting the disarray in Syria and violating international law. And Israel goes, yeah, and wouldn't you do it if your enemy fell apart and their army fled? Wouldn't you secure their positions across from yours so that you have a larger buffer zone? Turkey, a major backer of anti-Assad forces, also condemned Israel's advance. The Turkish foreign minister accused Israel of displaying the mentality of an occupier. Heaven forbid. You mean like Turkey is occupying that huge chunk of northern Syria? Let's see. On Monday, UN spokesperson said Israel's incursion constitutes a violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement. You mean the agreement that they had with Syria, a country that doesn't exist anymore?
Correct. I mean, the speech that Netanyahu gave left the door open for anyone, to contribute a separation force. But all these people want to condemn them. They don't want to say, hey, look, we'll put some of our people there between Syria and you and guarantee your security. None of those people want to be seen guaranteeing Israeli security. So,
yeah, I mean, this would literally
solve the problem. Offer troops. It's pretty simple.
This would legitimately be something the UN could do, right? This is, this is well within the kind of historic mandate that the UN has, is to occupy,
Well, the UN already occupied the exact space between the Israeli border and the bottom half of that security zone, right? Syria was on one side, Israel on the other one, and the MNFO was in the middle. I don't know why we wouldn't expand the MNFO to go up there. They didn't have enough troops to do it, which is why the Israelis did it. But you could certainly do it. Not that I think we should be involved over there at all, but someone could do it. Great opportunity for the Saudis and the Egyptians to show how much they care about peace in the Middle East.
That's right. Yeah. Within the last 48 hours, IDF struck most of the strategic weapons stockpiles in Syria, preventing them from falling into the hands of the terrorist elements. IAF and the Israeli Navy carried out 350 strikes during the operation. 70 to 80% of Assad's former regime's strategic weapons were destroyed. That's pretty impressive, and that will be a big hit to the incoming government, whoever it ends up being. That's something that's material that they'll have to replace somehow. So we'll see if we see UAE and Saudi Arabia and some of these Sunni countries kind of step up and help them out. Here's the thing, though, Joe. I don't know that there's any oil production that's currently under Assad that was under Assad's control. Is there? I can't remember.
No, a certain third-party nation came in and took it all over.
Well, I'm trying to think that there is some maybe in Homs, but most of it's all out there where the Kurds and the U.S. are. The waves of airstrike carried out by the IAF fighter jets and drones hit Syrian air defense systems, air bases, weapon depots, weapons production sites in Damascus, Homs, Tartus, Latakia, Palmyra. The IDF says that the airstrikes destroyed made many long-range projectiles, Scud missiles, cruise missiles, coast-to-sea missiles, air defense missiles, fighter jets, helicopters, radars, tanks, hangars, and more. The Israeli Navy says strikes at the Baida Bay and Latika port destroyed 15 Syrian naval vessels. Well, if you were in the Navy yesterday, I guess you're out of a job today.
No, there's plenty of debris to be swept off the dock.
That's true. Maybe get a job with a cargo line.
Look at that. He put it right down the vent hole. A little 2-meter square. Just like hitting a wombat back in Beggar's Canyon.
Yep. This is the Israelis blowing up a Navy. Oh, and here we got the ground targets.
Look at us. We blew up that one truck.
I mean, better us than you. Well, looks like they got some like ammo or something with that one.
And that one.
Yeah. All right, that's quite an energetic secondary explosion there. Well, I tell you, I hope these Syrian soldiers took the hint and got the hell out of there.
Yeah, one would hope.
Turkish proxies, along with support of Turkish airstrikes, advanced today towards the town of Kobani. Joe, what were we talking about the other day, right? They began their push after seizing control of Caracas, a bridge that connects western and eastern. I've been across that bridge before. The east, so you got Manbij on one side, and then you got Kobani or KLZ, which is where we have. I don't know if we still have, but we had a base there and an airfield. So it'd be interesting to see if we've moved out. I think we've moved out of that area. The attacks come as Turkish President Erdogan renewed vows to crush the terrorist organizations such as ISIS and the PKK, PYD in other parts of the country as soon as possible. Of course, he doesn't see any difference between the PKK and the YPD or YPJ.
Yeah. Even though there is a world of difference.
There is a world of difference. They're all communists, by the way. But
yes.
having talked personally with both, I talked to this one gal. She was a YPJ, right? Yeah. YPJ is the female organization. YPD is the male organization. And I asked her, I was like, "Listen, do you understand what the red star is on your logo?" And she said, "Oh, well, it's International Brotherhood, right?" And I was like, "No, that's international communism." And I was like, "You know what communism is, right?" She goes, "That's where everybody shares everything, right?" I was like, "Well, that's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it would be the authoritarian death cult that murdered 100,000 people." I didn't say that part, but
of course, Scott would have a story about talking to the e-thought in the middle of a combat zone.
Hey, now she was the interpreter. She was the interpreter for the, she was the commander for the Manbij Military Council's interpreter. And I was a public affairs officer doing my public affairs thing. What am I supposed to do? Though she did ask me not to take any pictures of her. I appreciated that. Let's see here. Meanwhile, 20 miles south, the U.S.-backed Kurdish-led Syrian democratic forces have withdrawn from Manbij, which is what we were just talking about, in their ongoing fight against the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army. The Kurdish Rojava Information Center said on Twitter Tuesday, or X on Tuesday, Turkey and its militias are now trying to reach the Tishrim Dam. There are lots of attacks against Tishrim and the dam. The FDF fighting the SNA outside Tishrim at present. They're using heavy weapons, and there are Turkish drones in the air. So you got a map here of that area. Kobani, Jarablus, Manbij. It looks like they're already, they're basically ceding that territory, and they withdrew back to this side of the Euphrates. Random PNW guy 84 for $10. Thank you very much, Scott, for the incoming Trump press secretary. I mean,
Scott's like, I may be available.
Who knows? We shall see. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, here we go. We've got a little Manbij Military Council guys going after the the Free Syrian, what is it? It's not Free Syrian Army, it's the SNA. They're music is no bueno with their little Ukrainian style. Now the Ukrainians aren't training the Manbij military house, which are part of the SDF.
They also came out and admitted that they were involved and sent many personnel to assist HTS.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to where the trainer was going on.
It's enough that it was statistically significant. It was more than one guy.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think it was like about a couple hundred, wasn't it?
Yes.
And there's your effects on target there. Oh, that guy's having a bad day right there. Blew his shoe off. Look at that. See the shoe going flying there. Let's see. SDF press footage. Turkish UCAV.
What? You don't like Turkish music?
Well, this is SDF music. This is Kurdish music. And to me, it's all,
there's a difference.
It's all Greek to me, man.
It's all Turk to me.
Well, when I was in Turkey, I actually said that unironically. I didn't realize, I kind of didn't realize.
You said it's all Greek to me in Turkey. Yeah. You're lucky you survived that encounter.
I know, but it was to a Turkish military person, so they had to be professional. The fighting there may be drawing to an end, but the SDF's Syria, Turkey-backed rebels reached a ceasefire agreement in Manbij through a U.S. mediation to ensure the safety. So it sounds like they wanted to get to the Euphrates River, but I'm betting Turkey's going to come in from the north. Fighters of the Mangione Military Council, who have been resisting the attacks since November 27th, will withdraw from the area as soon as possible. I
would like to point out something here. PNW, since he was talking about his bad jokes, I would like to point out that he sent me a story from some news source that says, just as random PNW guy predicted in the chat, that Bashar al-Assad intends to return to private optometry practice in Moscow. So you can have your eye doctor be Bashar al-Assad if you live in Moscow. I'm just throwing that out
there. Yeah. I had a former dictator. Give me. He
did my LASIK for me.
Yeah, he poked one of my eyes out, but never mind that.
I really doubt that his optometrist certification is that current. So
let's see. Claims are now emerging how Assad fled the country with a fortune. We recently told you Assad's massive bunker and huge car collection, riches he amassed with his people starved, is now said that he's in Russia, and claims that it have emerged that Assad transferred 135 billion in assets during his escape. That would get him a pat on the back arriving in Russia with that. The Assad family transferred the nation's resources into their own pockets during the years of civil war. As the regime collapsed, they took a large portion of the country's economy with them. The former Syrian dictator
He really wins with the comment there. That starts with really, by the way. Put it up there on the screen so that all may partake and enjoy.
Which one?
It says, really? What? So Russia gets the one legitimate Syrian refugee who won't be on welfare? Well done. Well done.
Yeah. Yeah. So you say he bought his visa? No kidding. That's an expensive visa. And the brave Assad ran away to Putin. Zelensky chided under. Oh wow, he's making fun of him on Twitter. Where will Putin run away to? Assad and Putin are more than just vassal and lord. They are accomplices in violence. Dictators like Assad cannot survive without dictators like Putin. And that's the reason why you have a house already waiting for you in London, Mr. Zelensky. Zelensky noted that his message came after Human Rights Day. Yeah, there's some really disturbing shit that came out of that prison. I don't want to play any of the videos because I'll be honest with you. I'd rather watch the videos of people getting murked than the stuff.
That video has been proven to have not been from Syria at all. So,
what, this one right here?
Yeah, that one right there.
Where did it come from?
It's from months ago, I believe, in Turkey. So
I'm curious if there's a community. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I yeah. There's comments on it that say the same thing. Administrators, guards, judges, prosecutors who worked at the prison were rounded up. If their fate remains unknown, they're going to execute them. They've already started doing that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
When they use a well-known and professional arrest technique like dragging you out by the head, you know that you're going to be treated well.
Yeah, due process, not today, my friend. But then again, did they give people that they put in prison due process? I don't think so. New billboards put up by ATS Salvation Government in Aleppo, creating facts on the ground fast. Interesting. I wonder how they, it's like as Sunnis, do they jump in support of Iran against Israel, or do they just basically sit that one out?
I don't know.
Joe, final thoughts? Anything you'd like to talk about prior to us saying goodbye to the chat?
I would watch for the protests against Daniel Penny to gain steam over the weekend. They're really building up to it, and they're making a lot of commentary. I would watch for that. I'd also watch for more atrocities to come out of Syria between now and Monday that make people all of a sudden be like, I don't know. So,
yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think you're right. I think Syria is going to be a lot more violent before it gets a lot more peaceful. But ultimately, they're going to be broke until they can pay for their recovery on their own dime, which I don't see happening anytime soon because Turkey's going to take that oil once we leave.
Yeah, that's true.
Essentially, I think the best bet for this government is to keep a low profile, just try to fix what's broke, and wait till the UAE Turkish money starts coming in for the oil pipelines they're gonna send through there, because that's the first big project. From Saudi Arabia up through Iraq into Syria, across and into Europe. That's the killer app right there.
Ottoman Empire 2.0.
Exactly right, brother. Exactly right. All right, Joe. That's all I've got. Chat, you were awesome today. Appreciate you guys. Joe, thank you very much. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Hit the bell for notifications. And make sure you tell people that we got some good stuff going on over here. Sorry the watcher couldn't be here. He was feeling under the weather today, so I had to produce the show myself. I think I did all right, all things considered.
You did a fair to middling job. You didn't do too bad. It was very meh. So
very meh. That's right. Yeah. We're talking about Syria, right? Very depressing topic. It's kind of hard to get excited about it.
Yes.
But here's the thing.
I would have done horribly, so you did way better than I would have done. So,
well, the key thing that I want to leave with the folks with is the reason why we're talking about Syria is because these are the kind of countries that cause problems well beyond the actual, like the 11-day lightning, offensive. This is going to be a headache for Trump for the entire presidency. I predict, unless the only potential way that this doesn't is if Saudi Arabia, kind of pulls him into the, hey, don't be a moron camp, and says, listen, if you don't cause trouble, you can make money, and they, like a good Muslim, they decide to give up their convictions for a fat bank account. So that's a pretty universally accepted kind of thing in the Muslim world. All right, Joe, I'll see you, brother. Appreciate it. Chat, you guys have been awesome as always. Stay safe.